Hey, so I'm back with another project I wanted to share with you guys. Um, Lately, I've been learning JavaScript, and so up until now, I've been focused on Ruby and a web framework called Rails. You can look at my previous videos. I have a couple with Rails, I think, and then one with Sinatra, another Ruby framework. So with these frameworks, if you're just using the framework itself, um, just Ruby, um, and HTML and CSS, every time you change the page or change the database, you're refreshing the page. And so that doesn't make for a very interactive, seamless user experience. So with JavaScript, it gives you the capability to query the database and change things on the screen all without refreshing the page, which makes the user experience very seamless and very, very nice, very fast. So I've been having a lot of fun with this. So what I got here is just a Pokemon Teams app where you can just add Pokemon to a team and remove them. So here I got this button that just adds Pokemon, and I've got this release button which releases it. So I'm basically just, when I'm adding a Pokemon, I'm grabbing a particular Pokemon and I'm setting that Pokemon's team ID to this specific team. And then when I release it, I'm just actually assigning that team ID to a random number between 0 and the number of teams that I have. So that's basically the functionality of it. What's really interesting, what's really cool, is how this is all working. This is a new concept to me. I'm using Rails for the back end, for the server-side stuff, to actually render this API. I'll get into that in a second. And I'm using JavaScript for the front end. So this JavaScript page is just a page, whereas this API is actually connected to a server that's connected to my um, local environment here. But how this is all working is with these buttons here, they're sending fetch requests to my server. So just to start off from the top here, here's my base URL, that's my server. Here's the trainer's URL, the Pokemon URL. Here I'm getting the total number of Pokemon because I need to use that later. And just to explain how the function of fetch works. So I'm plugging in Pokemon URL, and I'm converting it to JSON. Converting it from JSON. And here I'm grabbing the JSON data. So I'll plug in, let's see, I'll show you what the API looks like that we're talking to here. It's just Pokemons. So getting that data attribute, which is all of the Pokemon in the database. And I'm just calling .length, which gives me the number of Pokemon. So now I'm setting this total Pokemons to that length there. So fetching trainer info. So this is where we're going to grab all of the trainers and pass them to my create card, which is going to create the actual divs here. So just getting the trainer URL, converting it from JSON, doing a for loop. So for each element in there, I'm calling create card. Create card takes the actual trainer that I'm getting from this for loop. And let's see, what's important here is setting a new trainer name. So here, trainer name equals create element. So we're creating a little p element with the that I'm calling trainer name just as a variable. So trainer name in our HTML, I'm setting it to attributes name. So we're digging into attributes and then getting into name. And that's going to be the inner HTML of that element. So then we're actually appending the div with that element. So here's our button, add Pokemon button. Each time that's clicked, it's going to go to this add Pokemon method here. Let's just go down and look at that. Add Pokemon. So with that, we're fetching that specific trainer. And we're checking to see how many is in there. And if it's less than 6, because I wanted to cap it at 6, we are performing another type of fetch. Instead of just getting data, we're going to patch data, which is going to actually change data in the database. And so how I'm doing that is, you can see here, I've got this config object, which I'm going to call right there. I just like to use a variable, so it keeps my actual fetch line here a little bit cleaner. So basically, this just lets it know that I'm doing a fetch request, a patch request. And so here we go into getting the response.json, and basically the information that I'm sending in the patch request is all right here. This is the easiest way to do it that I found. Basically, in my routes, when I'm getting a patch request to a specific Pokemon, I'm sending that to my Pokemon update controller action. And Pokemon controller action, this one right here, update, is just finding the Pokemon from the ID and updating the Pokemon from Pokemon params, which is just this right here. So it's looking at params and finding a key called trainer ID that's just corresponding to this right here. This is my params. So in this right here is going to equal that trainer ID that I'm grabbing from the button. And it's updating that Pokemon to that trainer ID. So what else do we have here? So that's how we're adding Pokemon, updating the team. Until list release button. I'll get into a little bit about the release button here. So we're creating a release button. We're giving it a class of release. We're giving it some inner text release, giving it the ID of the actual Pokemon, so that when I call release Pokemon, I am sending that ID to my release Pokemon method. Here's my release Pokemon. Again, just a fetch request here to grab my total number of trainers, so that when I do this patch request, I am just sending a patch request I'm just setting the ID to. I didn't talk about that with the last patch request. Basically, all this is just a random number between 0 and my number of trainers. It was the same for this. Where did it go? Yeah, it's same for this, where we were updating the trainer ID. This just gives me a random number that's between 0 and my total number of Pokemons. So in same here, just a random number. I'm assigning, like I said earlier, when I'm releasing the ID, I'm just assigning a random team. And getting rid of the LI, so it appears that has left that team, but actually, it's just been applied to a random team. So doing the same thing here, trainer ID, setting it equal to a number between 0 and all of my, and the number of my trainers, passing like a big object, which just lets it know that I am doing a patch request. And here I'm just returning a JSON. So what's really cool is how this is all working with Rails being the back end, JavaScript being the front end. JavaScript is just producing, my Rails is just producing this API. It's really cool how when you actually spin up your new application, your new Rails application with your Rails new command, you can add in a flag, just -- API, which optimizes it to be used to just generate an API. Because in previous projects, when I was just using Ruby and Rails and some HTML and CSS, obviously, the user experience is just not quite the same as like your average user experience. But if you use Rails to generate an API and you use JavaScript to change your page and just talk to your API, then it creates a so much better user experience that's just more like what you see when you go to an average website. Yeah, so Pokemon controller. So when I'm rendering these APIs with this render key, normally render word keyword, normally you would render an actual view, a file that you have over here that corresponds to an HTML document. But here you see I'm rendering a JSON, and I'm setting that JSON equal to this right here. Now I kind of like writing out my own JSONs by hand, you could say, because then I know exactly what they look like and everything. But this is also a good way to do it. Basically, this Pokemon serializer.new takes my variable that I've set right here and passes it to this, which generates an API object based off of that variable. And here I'm setting attributes, and I'm setting its associations. Each Pokemon belongs to a trainer, and each trainer has many Pokemon. So that allows me to do associations through a thing called active record, which is object relational management. So makes all this possible. So yeah, that's the controller and the serializer. Here's my routes. I've got these just correspond to like all the standard create, read, update, delete actions. Here I've written this one out myself. This is how I'm, let's look at where we are calling that. See, in this fetch request, it is a patch request, and it is going to the Pokemon URL. This is just the localhost 3000 plus my Pokemon ID. And then here I'm passing in my trainer ID. So when my server gets that request, it sends it over to Pokemon Update in my Pokemon's controller. Here's my update. I'm finding the Pokemon through that ID in the URL. I'm calling Pokemon.update with the params, which is just this right here. You can see there's my trainer ID. I'm permitting trainer ID. This is a security feature so that, from online, they can't actually, you only allow certain parameters through. So I'm allowing trainer ID parameter here. And basically when I call Pokemon params, it's just going to equal that ID that I passed in there. And then I'm sending back a JSON. So yeah, that's basically the gist of how it's working. I've just been having a lot of fun using Rails for a backend and JavaScript for a front end. It's been really fun. I mean, JavaScript has been around for a while, and when it started, it was not created to do the things it's doing now. So I definitely see some ways where it's kind of an old technology that's been upgraded to do some things that we needed to do, but it can do everything you need it to do now. It's really fun. I consider myself more of a back-end server-side developer, but working with JavaScript with these APIs it's a lot of fun. I mean, as a web developer, I want to create websites that have this fast, responsive, seamless user experience, and the way to do that is JavaScript. So it's been really fun. So that's all I got for you for right now. Thanks for watching.